If you've ever heard of the AC method for factoring, this is the video that's going to show you a couple examples on how to use the AC method to factor a trinomial. First thing you need to know is, why is it called the AC method? Because your first step is going to be to take your A value times your C value. So 6 times 8 is 48. And what I'm looking for now is the things that multiply to 48 and add up to negative 19. Now, I'm not sure what those are off the top of my head, so what I'm going to do is list out the things that multiply to 48. To keep track of my list, I'm going to start with 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12. 5 isn't going to work. 48 would be 6 times 8. 7 doesn't work, and 8 is already on my list. So I now have all of the factor pairs that multiply to 48, but in order to get a negative 19, these numbers that I'm using here have to be both negative. So negative 1 times negative 48, negative 2, negative 24, keep going on down the list. And I want to see what pair in this list, obviously it multiplies to 48, but also adds up to negative 19. And the only pair that's going to work is negative 3 and negative 16. So now that I know the pair of numbers, I'm going to use those numbers to take this trinomial and turn it into a 4-term polynomial. So leave the first term the same. This middle term we're going to split using this factor pair. So negative 3n minus 16n. It doesn't matter which order you write them in. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull down that plus 8. Okay, so it seems a little counterintuitive to take a 3-term polynomial and turn it into a 4-term polynomial, but there is a method to the madness, because now what we're going to do is we are going to group, it's called factor by grouping, we're going to group pairs. So we're going to group the first two and look for a GCF. So the first two have a common GCF of 3n. And what's left behind would then be 2n minus 1. Now, the second two terms have a common 8. However, because this leading term is negative, I'm actually going to take out or factor out a negative 8. So that would leave 2n minus 1 behind. One thing to check for when you are doing the AC method is to make sure that this parentheses set, those two parentheses sets, have to match exactly. If they don't match, one of two things has happened. Thing one, you may have made a mathematical error. Okay, that's possible. Thing two, it's also entirely possible that you can't factor the particular problem that you are trying to do. One of those two. All right, so the last step here is we're going to actually factor out across the whole problem. So our two parentheses sets, right, we're going to factor those out and then write down what is left over, which would be the 3n minus 8. So that is the AC method for factoring. Okay, and you end up at the end, when you have your two factors, the order that you write them doesn't matter. So you could have 3n minus 8 and then multiply times the factor of 2n minus 1. The other thing to be aware of with this problem is, if you wanted to check it, you could multiply your two binomials together to make sure you get back to the original. I'm going to show you guys one more example. So I'm going to slide over. Here's my other example. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm looking to do my A value times my C value. So 4 times negative 9 is negative 36. And I want to write out the things that multiply to negative 36. I'm going to temporarily ignore my negative sign. I'll get back to it. But for right now, I'm just going to do 1 times 36. What would that be? 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. Okay, now to deal with the signs here for this particular problem, I know I need to multiply to a negative 36, but I'm trying to add up to a positive 35. In order to add up to a positive, I need the larger number in the pair to be the positive number. So I'm going to make all of these smaller numbers negative. Actually, that last one won't make any sense because they're the same number. So when we're looking at this factor list, what you want to look for is clearly these all multiply to negative 36, but which pair would also add up to be positive 35? And the nice part is it's the very first pair on the list. Okay, so first number, first term here, we're going to drop. Split your middle term. All right, so plus 36v minus 9. Now you want to group your 4 terms. So you're going to group the first two, look for a GCF. The only thing they have in common is a v. So let's see, that would be 4v minus 1 left over. And then my second 2 terms, I'm going to group those up and look and see what they have in common. And they share a positive 9. So 4v minus 1. Double check, parenthesis matches parenthesis set. So now to write my final factors, I've got the factor they shared, 4v minus 1, and then the factors that they didn't share, the v and the plus 9. So that's the factored form of that particular problem. Again, this is AC method. So if you have been wondering how it works, I hope this has helped.